Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We are here today with Corson. This is an interesting podcast for myself because, as you guys know, I originally started off in PRS and we are in the same region. So, if I was competing in that, this would be the person smashing on me left and right every single day out there on the range. You're doing really well in the season, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do in the finale. But today we have Corson. Corson, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
Just living life. It's Sunday. We're talking shooting. I guess the only better thing we could potentially be doing right now is at the range shooting, but I'll take this as a close second.
Yeah, yep.
Yep. So, again, why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of your background in shooting, who you are? I know that we got connected through Bat Machine, right? Bat Machine is a sponsor of the website. You do some shooting for them, and but you're a fairly accomplished shooter yourself, competitor and machinist. So I'd love to just give everybody a little bit of context around who you are, what you do, what got you into shooting, and sort of currently where you are now.
All right. Well, so originally from Homer, Alaska. Um, I moved to Washington State in 1998, I believe, and so I grew up hunting and fishing. Grew up around guns in Alaska, and when I first moved down here, I drove down the Alcan, so I kind of left everything up there, and went home to visit family and decided to bring some of my guns home, and there at the time there was a range about 15 minutes from my house here in Washington, so um, took some of the old hunting guns that I had, some hand-me-downs and whatnot, and started shooting groups with those, and yeah, that led me down the rabbit hole of trying to make those old guns a little bit more shoot a little bit better, and then before you know it, I'm reloading, and then yeah, a buddy at the range said, "Hey, there's a match. You should come shoot a match." So
Mm.
I think my first match was at Sun Targets in Moxie. It's actually the match that I shot yesterday. Um, and yeah, the community was super welcoming. The hardest part was just uh, getting the guts to show up, and then once I was there, everybody was really welcoming, and it was super fun, and I've kind of been bit ever since. So
And
yeah.
how old were you when you decided to go do that first event?
um well, I'm 44 now, and I've been doing it for probably eight. Well, let's see, it was 20. I'd say 2016 was probably my first event. So yeah, yeah, nine. Been shooting competitively for probably about 9 years now.
So that I would say that's like, I think sort of looking around the disciplines, right? I would say that that maybe skews a little bit older than when you would see like people sort of entering into that competition, side of it. Did you feel like you had any maybe some sense of maybe better maturity or calmness about you or anything like that? Because I know that our goal is to get more people into long range shooting, and I don't think necessarily age maybe for a lot of people feels like it's a factor, especially when you're in your late 30s, early 40s. But did you feel like there was anything there that maybe sort of made it a bit easier for you to transition in?
No, no. I mean, other than having the finances to do it, right?
Yeah,
I
that's a big part
I'm
of it.
I'm I'm not sure that if I was in my 20s that I'd have the pocketbook to be able to do what I'm
Mhm.
what I'm doing now. Uh, so there's that, but yeah, I mean, if anything, age makes it tougher. I'm definitely not seen as well as as I was, 5 years ago. Um, so yeah, it's really cool seeing some of the young guys come out, with their dad or whatever, and start shooting at a super young age. Um, those kids learn so fast, and
Mhm.
when they have a mentor uh, that can kind of teach them the ropes and help them learn the the harder lessons in competitive shooting more quickly.
Mhm.
It's pretty cool, man. I mean, yeah, what I wouldn't give to be young again, right?
Yeah, it's I just got back not too long ago from the World Championship for Rimfire, and I got to watch the teens compete. And it's a sort of an interesting dynamic, right? Because so long as you have the right equipment, and you have a good load setup and you have some time under you, I sort of tell people like if you want to get to sort of the middle of the pack, right? You want to be able to be competitive and you want to start working your way up. You start with that stuff. You start with fundamentals. You start with having a good rifle. You start with having a good load. And then you see that with these teens, and it's like, it's one of the few sports you'll see where there's like a equal level of respect from an adult to a teenager, because those teenagers are out shooting them a lot of times. um
Absolutely.
yeah, it's quite amazing to watch, how they're doing. But I would say like there is sort of this, well, not only that's like their flexibility, their mobility, their don't have any creaks yet, and they're still able to probably fairly good cardio shape, things like that. So that does make a significant difference. But I do see with a lot of the senior shooters, right, there's a little bit more calm. There's that experience behind the rifle, which makes a huge difference. And knowing how to work through certain positional shooting, which is interesting. But yeah, no, I'd love to see like some sort of study around these different age segments, right? And see how they're doing, how they're competing, and maybe how fast they're moving up as new shooters would be really interesting to see. Maybe Precision Rifle Blog, they have the resources to do stuff like that, right? So you start shooting, you start competing. These rifles you had, what did you do to them to say, okay, like I want to be a bit more competitive? Because I think that is a really interesting thing for a lot of people. They have a hunting rifle, or maybe they have something they bought, that's a little bit done up from the shop, but it's not really there. What are the sort of next steps that you took to be a bit more competitive?
Well, when I started, I feel like the sport was a little bit different than it is now.
Hmm.
If we're being honest, it's blown me away how much smaller the targets have gotten, how competitive the sport has gotten in the last um, 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
It's a whole different ball game. I mean, a guy used to be able to take a factory rifle and throw it in a chassis and be pretty competitive back then.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, the sport's blown up, right?
Hmm.
And because of that, the competition's got tougher. Um, there's so many good shooters out there that um, that just doesn't cut it anymore. You used to be
Hmm.
able to bring a one MOA rifle to a match, and if you shot 80%, you were going to win it. And it's a whole different ball game now.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but the well, I know it doesn't answer your question, but um, the gear has changed a whole bunch, right?
Hmm.
From when I started to what I'm running now, um, and yeah, I'm always trying to find that next little advantage, right?
Hmm.
With how the rifle fits me and things like that. So
I think there's been quite a like fairly well done video series. The one that sort of comes to mind right now is Eric Cortina did the 6.5 Creedmoor Needs More, where he took a sort of baseline 6.5, and if I remember correctly, and he changed out one component, right? Changed out the chassis, changed out the trigger, added a new barrel on, right, like a heavy contour barrel, things like that. And there's a lot of people that have sort of done that. And I do think for newer shooters, particularly if you don't have the funds to go straight in to get a custom built rifle, right? This is your only option, right? But they're good options. There's a lot of great companies. So that's the one thing that maybe you could talk on a little bit, right? You probably have seen this as well, and I know I have in the last decade. The technology's gotten better. The Because more people are in the industry, they're able to bulk stuff a lot better. The machining processes and the way they develop this stuff has gotten better. and it's been able to bring some of the price points down, right? So we see a lot more companies in the space that I think are of better quality than we used to have. That, not to say that there weren't a bunch of amazing companies, but it's really the skyrocketed. I mean, you can talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the production class in the PRS, I think um, from that, there's a whole bunch of rifles that are off the shelf, um, ready to go for $2,500 that
Hmm.
are absolutely capable of winning a match, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's important to have, especially when you're learning, it's important to have good shooting rifle, good equipment.
Hmm.
Obviously, it doesn't need to be the best, but um, at least for me, it's important to know that when I miss a target, when I miss a shot, that it was 100% on me, right?
Hmm.
And for me, that speeds up training. Um, I have heard people in the past say, "Well, I can, this is just a training rifle," or "Oh, I'm just," and um, that can give somebody an excuse, right? Oh, well,
Hmm.
I missed a whole bunch of targets because I'm just running this, right? Um, it was the same thing when I was shooting 22 long rifle for fun. We had a match up here that I'd shoot every once in a while, and man, I if I'm training with whatever I'm training with, I want it to be shooting really tight, and then
Hmm.
that way it's all on me. And when I see things downrange um, that bullets that aren't going where I wanted them to go, it's all on my shoulders, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean that's my taste. Yeah, machining processes, actions, chassis, stocks, scopes. I mean, it's all gotten so good. There's so many manufacturers out there.
Hmm.
You know, I think the middle of the road stuff is good enough um, to get anybody to the to the upper mid pack.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's an interesting process, right? And I think you sort of hit it on the nail on the head, right? The ability to sort of progress in that has gotten substantially quicker. And to find gear, and there's so many people out there helping like disseminate that information, right? So that's made it a lot easier. But I will say is that I sort of had the same perspective when I came in, and I do go back and forth on this because I spent 10 years before I pulled the trigger on like building a rifle. Um Now, I was in undergrad, I was in grad school, and so, I had other things going on. But when I really decided, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna start saving. I think it was maybe 2.5, 3 years, because I had the same mentality where I was like, if I'm missing a shot, I have to know it's because I suck at shooting and not because it's there's something wrong with my rifle, right? And that sort of, it gave me a lot of time to do research, figure out what companies are really trusted and have performed year over year over year. And that's why I initially went with Bat Machine. I went with a company called Wolf Precision. They make it's called the Ace system. It's a separate chamber for your rifle, and then you have a barrel that goes onto it, but they had partnered with Bat, and I got what was called the Bat Action Elite, which I think in the lineup for Bat is their VR action, right? It's sort of an early concept of the for precision rifle, right? And so that was the first thing I built on. And I built with the heavy contour Krieger barrel. I went with the MDT Premier, which was like the top one at the time, and two-stage Diamond Tech trigger, and Collis at the time, the Collis 5 to 25 DLRI, which was their top of the line one at the time, because it was very expensive. But again, I had the same mentality as you, right? But it's hard to tell people like, hey, be patient and just wait when you could be out there having fun and doing, stuff like that. So I totally get that. So you start to get into shooting, you're starting to compete. When do you really decide that you're gonna build your custom rifle?
well, I don't want to dissuade people interested in getting into the sport
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they need to go, buy a budget production class rifle for $2,500 and then throw a few
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 scope on it. My first precision rifle was a Remington 700 SPS with
Mm-hmm.
a SIG scope on top of it, and it was definitely not the right tool for the job. Um, but the first couple matches for anybody, I think for most people, I mean, you're not even going to know how the game's played, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just having it, I mean, if you've got a scope that you can dial and ammo and a rifle, um, it's worth going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of that is that there's this community is so welcoming that you'll right off the bat you'll be inundated by how much gear there is out there, what people are running, um, you know, chassis more about fit, um, scopes. I mean, there's so much, and then once you go down the rabbit hole and you realize that this sport's for you, it's a little bit easier to spend that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, but yeah, for me, it was pretty quick. I got on Sniper's Hide and I was looking for some sort of a deal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I bought a 6 Creed used off somebody and kind of put that together and put it in a chassis and put a scope on it and off we went. So um,
And how far was that into your sort of competition? Because you started doing competitions, like, did you wait a year or 2 years, or how quickly did you decide to buy that?
so yeah, no, it was right off the bat, bud.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Immediately.
I went from shooting my hand me down 30-06 to that
Mhm.
SPS, and then right after that, I'm building the chassis again and taking that to my first match. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it
Okay.
was it was probably a few months
Mhm.
transition, I would say, and then reloading was about 6 months after that. I'm still learning how to do that. But.
Yeah, I know reloading is an interesting interesting thing, and it is sort of the biggest talking point I have around, right? As I examine all of these different shooting disciplines, as I have the benefit of working with the USA team members, so the highest level shooters in the country in all of these disciplines, and getting able to talk to them, I realize how much reloading is growing in the PRS space and how it's becoming that much more important. Because, like you said, right, like targets are getting smaller, people are getting better at shooting. Um, their IQ around the sport and their knowledge on how to build their rifles are all starting to get up to par. And so, my big thing that I've been talking about is I think the bench rest level, F class level of reloading is what is starting to trickle into PRS, right? Especially as the purses for PRS start to get bigger, right? I mean, you had a $10,000, $20,000 person there, right? People are going to try to find a way to be that much more competitive, and so it's really interesting to start to see those shifts. How I mean, serious is probably not the right word, but like, how much are you focusing on your reloading right now?
Um, I've pretty much settled in my processes.
Mm,
Um, um, but I reload all my own ammo. I've got buddies that own reloading companies. And want to load my ammo for me. But that's another one of those things that I think I need to be able to put back on my shoulders. Right.
mhm,
Um, it's important. It's important to me that every single aspect of my performance comes back to me.
mhm,
And I don't want to be able to blame that on anyone else. So it's for that reason that I load all my own practice ammo. I load all my own match ammo. Um, started shooting for Sierra this year, so shooting some different bullets than I have, and and some that I've been shooting for years as well. But that kind of got me back into kind of tuning some stuff. Right, once you find the secret sauce for a bullet and a cartridge, it's pretty
Mm.
easy. But yeah, I've been trying a whole bunch of new stuff with some of the bullets that they've got, and phenomenal results. And yeah, I mean, I'll be heading to the range when we get off here. So, um, it's yeah, like I said before, the targets are getting smaller, and if you're in it to be competitive, you can throw some powder in a case and be in the mid pack. But if you want to get better, rest assured that somebody wants it just as bad as you do, and if they're putting in the work when you're not, they're probably going to beat you.
Yeah, it was sort of I entered this space, I think, at a time where ammo was like really tough to get. Powder was really tough to get. Primer. I mean, there I like just entered at a weird time, and so to buy factory ammo was fairly expensive, and I didn't really know about reloading. Right? Nobody. I guess I just it somehow it skipped my brain. I didn't really know. And so I'd spent all this money on this really, high end action or this really high end system. And I was like, people are like, oh, you're going to need to reload. And so I'm looking at the price, right? Trying to figure out like, what can I get? Now, I've learned a lot more and I realized there's a lot of things you can get that work really, really well. And you don't need to get the thing that is the most expensive. I didn't know that at the time, but you end up adding another 20 grand, in reloading stuff and materials, and then there's the testing cost and all of that sort of stuff. So you have to, I think, when you decide to take that step, right, and move up, you have to really sort of enjoy what you're doing, right? I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't really like reloading." I'm like, well, we'll see how far that gets you because you're probably going to be reloading a lot if you're shooting as much as like someone like yourself does, right? I mean, how many rounds are you getting through a year?
I've only last year was the only year that I counted rounds in a year, and the only
Mhm.
reason I was able to do that is because that's when I started shooting for bat.
Mm.
Um, so I was able to look at all my bat actions and the barrels that I'd spun up for them over the course of the year, and I was over 12,000 center fire rounds.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds
And
about
then
right. I think I normally say like what I've heard is around 10,000 rounds if you're shooting center fire. I'll sometimes for like rim, I'll hear people do like 30,000, somewhere around there, 20, 30,000 for rimfire. And then I think PRS or not PRS, F class is fairly similar to PRS. So yeah, super interesting. So obviously you don't jump into the sport and you're in the Western region. I think you're in Washington, right?
yeah, yes, sir.
So you don't jump into the sport and you're not the best person, right? In your region, you're not the best person in the country. What does that progress look like for you, right? Like over the years? Because I think as of recently, you weren't that far off, or you were number one in the region, right? Not really sure where you are currently, but one of the top shooters in the country, doing fairly well in your region. What did that trajectory look like for you?
Um, well, so I started out shooting. We had quite a bit of regional matches here. The Rifleman's Team Challenge was a pretty big thing in the Northwest at the time. Um, and so I shot quite a few of those matches. Those went over to Montana. There's more that series kind of moved a little bit. And at the time, the NRL Race Gun Series was kind of the premier national series in the Northwest. There wasn't a whole lot of PRS matches. Um, so yeah, I mean, I started out shooting as many 1 day matches as I could. Get with some friends and shoot some team matches. That was a lot of fun. And then shoot a couple national matches a year. Basically, is what it was. The ones within driving distance. Um, so yeah, I didn't get into shooting the precision rifle series matches until um, and I don't know, maybe 2018, 2019.
Mhm.
Something like that, or at least the Pro Series matches. Shooting the 1 day stuff, did a lot of that. the closest match to me is about 4 hours away. So
Wow.
just going to a 1 day match is most of them require a hotel, right? And some travel time, a couple 100 miles driving. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was about it. Just go to as many matches as I could and practice and have fun in between is about how that looked.
So 2018, 2019, you start shooting centerfire PRS. And your goal, I would imagine, is what a lot of people is like, I want to win the region, then I want to go to nationals and place and things like that, right? How long did it take you to sort of get to the top 10 of your region from 2018, 2019?
Man, I'd have to look at the results. I can't even so well in 2021 I won
Mm.
uh the sports changes so much, man. So yeah, like I say, there wasn't a whole lot of national stuff going on in the PRS early on because the NRL race gun had that.
Mm.
So I was doing the regional stuff, and at the time, a lot of the regional directors, none of us really understood what a qualifier was. Right? They were just rolling out this whole qualifier match thing. So in 2021. Somebody decided that the Northwest region wasn't big enough to have their own region. So they combined what is the Rocky Mountain region and the Northwest region together for the regional series in
Mm.
2021. Um, and in in Washington and I believe Oregon, I think there was two qualifier matches the entire season, and it was nobody's fault other than um, most of the match directors didn't even know what a qualifier was,
Mm.
and they absolutely didn't know that every match director, every match location could have a qualifier, right? So there just wasn't qualifiers. And
Mm.
we get to the end of the season, and I had pretty good points. I think I might have had 300 points. I might not have, anyways. Um, and there was one last qualifier. It was in Central Oregon, so it was about 10.5 hour drive from me. And it was a match director who had never directed a match before. It was his first match. Um, and I made the decision to not drive to that qualifier. Um, and then I went to the Snake River area and shot the 2021 finale and won it. So I ended up 31st, I think, or something like that in the series, um, just for lack of a qualifier score, and I blame that on lack of qualifiers at all.
Mm.
But I think we all learned from that, and there's qualifiers all over the place now. So um,
Mm.
I've won the series. I think I won the series in 22, um, 22 or 23, and then last year I a day before the finale I blew my finger open at work. I broke my finger and blew it wide open. So that kind of hindered my performance at the finale. But that's the way it goes. And then I had a 300 early on this year in the regional series, and I had to make a decision as to there was a world's qualifier down in Oklahoma at the same time. So I had to decide whether I was going to go shoot in Oklahoma and kind of throw my hat in that ring, or whether I was going to shoot another regional finale. And I decided to fly to Oklahoma. So
Mm. I got you. When sort of in this process, right? I mean, obviously some growing pains in all of these leagues, right? We're seeing that a lot. I mean, they're expanding, a lot of them, right? They're doing fairly well. We're seeing a lot of growth in them. So you were clearly, one of the earlier adopters in sort of this process and things like that. But when in your shooting journey did you sort of feel like I could be one of the best shooters in the country? Like, did that moment hit you at any point, or was it not until you were sort of already at the top and it happens, or how does that work for someone at that level of shooting?
man, that's a crazy question. I haven't really thought of it like that. Um, I just kind of keep making goals for myself,
Mm.
and and once you achieve one goal, you go to the next. Um, been shooting a lot, so at some point, well, if you want to win a match, you have to know that you can win a match, right? You've got to know that you can win a match. Um, and there became a point where I'd shot enough national matches and placed well enough that I went to a match and I kind of looked at the people there that were at that match, and well, I've beat all these guys at one time or another, right?
Hmm.
Maybe not all at the same time, but um, so why not again today, right?
Hmm. And that, I mean, what are these small goals you're talking about, right? Is that like I want to place at this match, and are you making those sort of like match to match, or are these something you're looking at globally, like over a season?
Um, I didn't really start making global goals till the last couple years, and I don't know, those changed too, right? Kind of like, I mean, one of my goals was to win the Northwest Regional Series again, and then I decided to not go to the finale. So it's that, the goals are still fluid,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, you start out small, right? And most of my goals are personal. I'm competing against myself. So yeah, in the beginning they were usually driven by my weaknesses. If I had a match that didn't go the way I wanted, I had some issues or whatever else. Or well, one of my goals was to learn to shoot better in the wind.
Hmm.
Very early on, I remember there was a match about 4 hours away that I could drive to in the morning, shoot, and be home by dinner. It was a place called UNSC, and 600-yard range, tall trees, not a whole lot of wind. And that year there was another regional match that was a couple hours further away, that required a hotel, required a lot more of an investment, but it was in the Cheney Blue Ridge area, and there was a lot of wind there. So when I realized that, when I decided I wanted to get better at shooting in the wind, um, I went and shot windy matches instead of the not windy matches, right? So that's kind of where it started, and then yeah, I mean, um, now there's placement goals. I mean, I didn't really have a goal of qualifying for the world team until a few weeks ago. If
Hmm.
yeah. So uh, yeah.
No, I totally understand that. It's an interesting process to sort of dissect how shooters get better, right? For myself, I sort of have a mentality of how I think I would structure certain things, and especially if I felt like I was struggling in an area. And this comes from being a coach for many, many years. I sort of look at a lot of things from that capacity, and I think, well, how do I turn that into a drill that would improve some component to improve that skill, right? That I can use a real time in a match. Um, Now this isn't as like prominent in F class shooting. That's what I shoot now, but I do think of this from a lot of times for you guys, right? And I go, I wonder if I could create a drill around that. And so it's interesting how people sort of take this experience and find a ways to improve it, and how that is able to drive them forward in this time that you've been progressing in this, right? Have you taken on any shooters, or do you have like sort of any advice for maybe newer shooters or shooters that are looking to sort of move up the ranks?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Identifying uh, weaknesses in yourself. It's super personal, right? Everybody's different. Um,
Hmm.
but identifying, that's the first step, and then figuring out ways that are going to be effective for you to train out those weaknesses.
Hmm.
um, it's super necessary, and the better you get, the harder it is um, to create those drills, right?
Hmm.
um, when there's low hanging fruit, when it's like, hey, I need to learn how to shoot in the wind better. Oh, okay, well, I'm just going to go shoot in the wind, right? That's pretty
Right.
easy. Um, but when it starts getting down to the more technical aspects of the sport, um, coming up with valid ways to train that out can get pretty darn tough. And I,
Mhm.
I think it's very personal, right? It depends on how what your problem is and how you learn, um, but it's definitely part of what, part of my growth is
Mhm.
identifying that, and then really dissecting it and being honest with yourself so that you can, like you say, coach yourself and
Mhm.
and figure out how to train that out.
Yeah, I sort of a long time ago like divided it into training you don't have to actually shoot with, right? So like I can't afford to shoot every single day. I don't know many people that can. And so, you have these sort of like dry fire skills, positional skills you can do. And for me, the biggest factor with F class shooting is wind, right? And so this year, I've dedicated the year to wind. And one of the companies that I'm working with is Wind Zero. They have a multi directional wind system that pairs multiple meters that you can put downrange, and it'll give you real time feedback. And this is the only system in the world that does this. It's like a Kestrel, except for it goes out and it pairs with multiple meters, right? Um, and so it's interesting to see how the technology that's coming in, and as we've sort of talked about this, how quickly people are progressing. I sort of attribute that to the growth of technology, the growth and I guess allowance of communication, because in a lot of disciplines it was very like hush hush, don't tell anybody what's going on. We don't want to give our secrets away, and I feel like people are have become a lot more willing to bring people into the cusp and share those secrets, and you're seeing quick projection or quick growth on those. And then the last one is really sort of like the ability to get rifles made, that information around that, and with companies you trust, right? Or companies you can trust, especially if you're brand new. And we're sort of navigating that space, and that's part of the project we're going to talk about in a little bit. But it's interesting to myself to see how that's grown, and particularly with the younger shooters, right? So you have been competing. How is this season going for you?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Yeah, I mean, um, let's see, I'm just shy of 300 points. I'd kind of like to win another match before the finale. So, but
Mhm.
man, that's tough to do. So, um, gotta shoot really good and also get a little bit lucky. So, we're gonna try to do that, and yeah, it's been going really well, man. I mean, um, all my gear's been running great. The Sierra bullets have been shooting great. My gunsmith's been taking care of me. I just broke in a barrel yesterday at a local match here, and man, that thing's shooting, uh, better than anything. So uh, I'm, I'm still having a good time, right?
Oh, well, you love to hear that, right? Talking a bit about your equipment, I know that if you guys don't know this, you can go to for most PRS competitors, they have profiles set up, and on there it'll give you a list of things that those shooters are using. Now I don't know how updated your profile is on there, but if anyone wants to go check it out, you can. But you want to give us sort of a walkthrough of, let's say, like partially what your builds look like, but then other, like if you want to mention any sponsors, any companies you're partnered with, things like that. I think that this is extremely beneficial to the shooters, and particularly new shooters, so they sort of understand like system wise what that looks like, right? What would make sense for maybe them in the future purchases. So you can start at the bottom and work your way up, or the front and work your way back, however you want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been shooting Masterpiece Arms chassis for. I mean, it was the first chassis that I bought, and I'm still shooting them now. Um, a couple of years ago, I started shooting Vixen Andy triggers. That was a good decision for me. It took a little bit. They don't feel at all like a trigger tech, and it took a little bit getting used to. But after making that transition, I'm really happy with that. Um, uh, what else do we have? We'll leave the action for last, but so I'm shooting benchmark barrels. They're about 45 minutes south of me. Been a huge supporter. The owner's a good friend of mine, and man, they make fantastic barrels and really really customizable.
Mm.
I have my own contour that's changed two or three times. You know, four groove cut rifle barrels and whatever I can dream up, those guys will make it. And so that's super cool. Having that sort of support. Um, uh, John Mills of Buffalo Creek Precision. He's been chambering my rifles for probably about 5 years. Um, I didn't start numbering my barrels until into the first year of working with him, but I think he just chambered up barrel number 50
Wow.
for me. So he's done a lot of work for me, and it's always been fantastic.
Mm.
Having a good relationship with my gunsmith has been um, uh, it's been amazing. I mean, it just the amount that we can learn with that relationship. We were just talking about it the other day. So he's also a competitor. And so he gets that. Um, Shooting my own muzzle brakes. Um, I've been making my own muzzle brakes for about 7 years now, and recently I had a production run of them done. So if anybody wants the best muzzle brake out there for PRS competition, I got 3/4 24 5 ports and 5/8 24 4 port brakes now. Um, Website's coming on here sometime shortly, but right now you just have to get a hold of me and I'll send you one. But yeah, there's some details on that. But been shooting Collis scopes. Shot the 5 to 25 DLR. Well, the 5 to 25, then the DLR. Now I'm competing with the 5 to 40. And those guys have been super supportive. And there isn't a scope. I mean, you know, they're on the top end
Mhm.
of the price point, right? Um, but it's absolutely worth it for me. So I've
Mhm.
been running those. And then yeah, the bad actions, man. Those guys got a hold of me just shy of 2 years ago and wanted to get into the PRS market, and so they sent me an action to try out, and it's kind of an interesting story. A lot of the stuff that I had been wanting to do um, for a PRS action, they had already incorporated into the Bat Hammerhead, and
Mhm.
it's and we both kind of came to the same conclusions in our own space, right? Like
Mhm.
when I went to meet with those guys and we started talking about, um, you know, I started talking about some of the things that I prefer, um, and some of the tweaking and massaging that I've done to actions in the past to get them to work the way that I want to. Bruce and Daryl they were, I mean, they were so many steps ahead of me, right?
Mhm.
Those guys are when it comes to machining, precision machining. Those guys are they're phenomenal, and just um, so much knowledge in the bolt action platform. Um,
Mhm.
that it was a super easy conversation, and um, you know, I mean, I didn't even know. I knew what it took. I knew what I wanted, and I knew ways to get my actions to feel the way I wanted, and those guys knew exactly why it was doing what it was doing, and had already incorporated that into the Bat Hammerhead before I even touched it. So
Mhm.
it's been a great relationship. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, those guys are phenomenal. So
So this is, I think, the perfect lead in, right?
sure,
You know, I put out an article not too long ago. I'm doing sort of a series. I don't know how long it'll take because obviously owners of companies are not always available. So, but I did one on Bat. I've done one on Borden. You know, another not as prominent action maker, but out in Kentucky. And so I'm sort of doing this series on action makers because it's an interesting topic. That's a lot of things are interesting to me because you can't always see the difference, right? Like an action, most actions look the same, most barrels look the same. So you have no clue of, when fluting started happening, that's when you started to see like a little, but then everybody started doing fluting. And so it was like, okay, well, now there's nothing special, right? So I wanted to dive more into that process, right? And I've already loved my back action. I've always been a big fan of it. But what I try to really explore in the space, which I don't think anybody else really is cross disciplinary platforms, right? Um, and that's where, I know Bat had sort of their initial footprint in um, what would be considered a PRS style action, but they weren't pushing it, right? And I thought that was particularly interesting because they are a company that if you talk to somebody that's in PRS, most don't know. But if you talk to somebody in F class, or you talk to somebody in bench rest, or you talk to somebody in ELR or in target shooting, they'll say that's one of the best actions you can buy, right? And so to me, that was sort of an interesting thing. Like, why do they not know about him? And then they came out with that hammerhead, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm excited about this because if you do some time, you spend some time researching, you understand that bat actions they're one of the older action making companies, but they have world record actions, right? And so there's no logically to me, there's no reason why they would then make a shit PRS action, right? They're not going to go backwards. So they're going to put every effort they can into making an action that is just as competitive as a bench press action or an F class action that meets the needs of a PRS for PRS shooters, right? And I think this is where I'm excited to get your perspective on this because I think when we spoke a while back, you told me you're a machinist, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've been a machinist for over 20 years.
So you clearly will have a good grasp of what's going on with this action, right? But can you talk to some of the nuances of this action? I mean, there are a lot of really prominent PRS companies I would imagine you could have worked with, maybe you had offers with, or you maybe consider doing, but you decide to go and stick with the bad action, right? Can you walk us through sort of some of those conversations you had? Why did you decide to choose a bad action? And one of the interesting things you talked to me about was you talked about how you have multiple of these actions, and from action to action to action, they all feel exactly the same. And that's an interesting thing that a lot of people won't understand because you have to be able to afford multiple rifles to do that, right? So I know I sort of spouted a lot out there, but can you walk us through this bat process?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so um, first of all, their TR is the action that you're referring to, and I think if I asked Bruce and Daryl, that action was, I mean, it was never. It would absolutely work for PRS, but it was never
Hmm.
designed to be a PRS action, right? It's
Hmm.
exactly what the name is. It was a tactical repeater. Um, so that's great, but just like you said, I mean, these guys make actions for so many genres, um, and make them with features that are specific to that genre to make them the best that they possibly can be. The devil's in the details, right?
Hmm.
And um, so I didn't choose Bat. Bat chose me.
Yeah.
They made the decision to call me up. Um, uh, and said, "Hey, we're interested in doing this action, and we need somebody that shoots a lot of matches, to kind of sanity check what we're doing." And like I said, when they laid their plan out on the table, a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say that I want in a PRS action, those guys had already done, right?
Hmm.
Um, I still own the second prototype, bat hammerhead, 75-0002. Still runs great. But we made a couple small tweaks. One of the things that I really liked was the short bolt throw. Um,
Mm.
that's that's something we'd been putting spacer kits, BR and Dasher spacer kits in magazines for years, right? And but you're still running the bolt further than you need to. And then there was a company that came out with a micro action. I forget who it was, but it was basically um, a shorter action for BR based cartridges, and then it needed a proprietary magazine, and that kind of um, might have been a little bit more complicated than it needed to be to achieve the same thing. So these guys had just made a replaceable bolt stop that shortened the stroke. So if you're
Mm.
running a spacer kit in your magazine, you take your bolt stop screw out and you put a different bolt stop in, and now you're only stroking the bolt as much as you need to.
Mm.
Um, they also had a 75-degree bolt throw. I had never run that before. I didn't know what that was going to be like, um, but they put a lot of effort into making that right. When you're trying to do the same amount of work in 75 degrees that you're typically doing in 90 degrees, um, you would think that it would be harder to do, right? And for
Mhm.
me, it's very important to have smooth opening and closing of the bolt so that I can stay on target for follow up shots. Um,
Mhm.
I'm a pretty slow PRS shooter, but uh, it was amazing to me when I started shooting the bat. But it's not a lot faster, but it's a little bit faster, and it costs me nothing. Right?
Mhm.
I was doing back to back stages and timing myself, and just that little stuff. Just those little details helped a little bit, and I wasn't giving up anything to do that, right?
Mhm.
So the other thing that we did is, at the this was before Gray Ops was making AW mags, but we put a second angle on the feed ramp of the hammerhead to make sure that it fed out of AW magazines. Smooth feeding is really important to me, um, to the point where they've made me uh, bolts that don't have any flutes in them. I don't I don't like to feel the rounds in the magazine as I'm feeding. Um, so the rounds going over flutes. So
Mm.
yeah, those guys made me some bolts that don't have any flutes, so I don't have to feel
Wow.
that, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm a pretty picky dude, but and then what else? One of the problems that's been around for a really long time with AICS magazines is if you're putting forward or pressure from below, you can run an AICS magazine up. And this only happens in positional shooting, right? Um, but the feed lips can impede the bolt travel. So we talked about that a little bit, and those guys came up with a plan, and they've incorporated a screw and shims to where you can um, you can space how far that magazine gets pushed up so that you can make it to where the an AICS magazine won't impede your bolt travel anymore.
Mhm.
Um, which I mean, it's little stuff like that that's it doesn't seem that big until you start having problems with it, and
Mhm.
then it's huge, right?
Mhm. So, the reason I sort of bring this up, right, is I'm doing a build on the Bad Hammerhead. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing a series. We're doing two different rifle centerfire builds where these are going to be trainer rifles. They're going to be loner rifles, side stage rifles, but really based around this idea of education. And so I literally got that action came in, and then I had to fly to England to film those events. So it sat, in the waiting period while I was gone. I came back, I got the barrel, and then I dropped it off at my gunsmith. So I've really have only like spent like 5 minutes looking at it. So I mean, I don't even have a clear picture of it in my head, honestly. But they still have the modular bolt assemblies, all right, that are still running those on the hammer, which is was really sort of a pioneering thing to have on your bolts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of people making replaceable bolt heads,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and they just made the entire shaft replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing the way that bolt works. there's a stack up of tolerances there. I mean, in my opinion, the way a bolt action feels has a lot to do with the handoff and the cocking piece, and also the the cocking cam, and then the space between the detent that
Hmm.
holds your cocking piece in place, and how that translates into that ramp, and all the if all that stuff's done just right, uh, it feels really good,
Hmm.
and it it's not easy to get it
Hmm.
to, to get it all to line up perfectly,
Hmm.
and I don't know, so these guys have added another tolerance into the stack up of tolerances that is manufacturing a bolt.
Hmm.
They've taken something that's really not super easy to do anyway, and they've made it one step harder in the name of modularity, and then they still nail the numbers better than anyone that I've ever seen. So
Hmm.
it's super impressive to me.
Yeah, the tolerances they hold, which I think for those who most people who don't understand actions, right? And they don't understand like what makes a okay action, a good action, and a great action or a world level action, right? Almost always it comes back to their repeatability and tolerances. Um, how well can they make these things from one action to the next and then be consistent, and you sort of spoke to this a little bit, right? Can you talk about the feel of a bad action, right? And what does it feel like from one bad action to another bad action?
Yeah, well, so I guess the first thing that I want to say is even before I was shooting for bat, there was this stigma. Um, People would say that bad actions have tight tolerances, right?
Hmm.
Which is absolutely true. Um, but I think some people are mistaking holding tight tolerances for um, less clearance, right? Tight doesn't mean tight. Tight means we've got tight tolerances means we have numbers that we want to hit, and we hit them really, we hit them every time.
Hmm.
Um, so I get that this asked so much. I mean, I've taken my action to the red dirt at Hornady in Utah. So the moon dust in eastern Washington, um, Oklahoma, Texas. It's been all over the place, and I don't clean my gun between days, right? And guys are kind of blown away. They're like, oh well, I thought bad actions had really tight tolerances, and that you might have issues with the action getting dirty and gumming up, and I said, well, they do have tight tolerances, but the clearances are perfect. I don't
Hmm.
have that. I don't have that problem, and so I don't know really where the stigma came from. Maybe it's because they've got such a prominent bench rest background, um,
Hmm.
where some of those clearances probably are tighter. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, this action is made for what we do, and they did a really good job with it.
Hmm.
Um, I got I got one action that came in that felt a little bit different, and I had asked. It was for my 223 trainer, so I'd asked for some specific stuff, and it felt a little bit different than the other five that I have, and um, I said, "Man, this one doesn't feel the same." And I called him up. I said, "Well, what do you think?" And we kind of ran some things around, and talked about some things back and forth, and so I took the cocking piece off, and I machined 3 thousandths of an inch off of the cocking piece. And um, I guess what I want to say is it's more a testament to how picky I am, because that's what it took for that action
Hmm.
to feel like the rest of mine. Um,
Hmm.
but uh, yeah, I mean it's I've never every single one of my actions feels the same, and that's important to me. Every single one of my competition rifles is set up the same, including my 22 long rifle, right? Um,
Hmm.
and that helps me go it helps me go from rifle to rifle to rifle, whether I'm shooting 308 or 223 or dasher or 25 by 47. I can get
Hmm.
behind the gun, and the only thing that's changing is the cartridge that I'm shooting.
Yeah.
So like I say, it's I'm probably more picky than most, um, but Um, and I don't. There's a lot of good action manufacturers out there, right? Um, and any one of them is absolutely capable of winning a match. But there are some little details that are important to me that the guys at Bat Machine just do better than the rest.
Hmm. Yeah, the clearance thing is really interesting the way that you put that, right? And I think, well, I know that you're you're in the right way on this because even when I was talking, obviously when I talked to Bruce, we did talk about this as well. But when I talked to Borden, and they make some of the top actions in the world right now for F class and bench. He had mentioned the same exact thing, right? And I had wrote about this analogy or this thing he did when he was at like camping with a bunch of buddies, and they threw dirt and they threw stuff in there, and it was cycling fine. There's no problems, and so he sort of had to. He was walking me through that and explaining that to me, but it's like in my head, right? I sort of the way I think about this is, okay, they made a world level action or winning action or the ability to win at the very least for bench. Then they were able to do that for F class, and I know that they're not going to do anything less than try to do that same thing for PRS, right? So that mentality, I think people don't fully understand and grasp. And then they're sort of working off and I had a little bit of pushback on using a bad action for the build I'm doing, right? Because they're more prominent PRS actions, right? Ones that are really established in that industry that do really, really well. And I have to explain to people, I'm like, all right, let me walk you through like this timeline if you're willing to listen to it, but this is the reason why, right? This is why I think you know they're going to make probably one of the better, if not best, actions that are out there. Now, I don't compete in PRS, so this is why I think it's very objectively nice to hear from someone like yourself who actually does. But you understand as a machinist the work that they're putting into this, the sort of almost obsessiveness it takes for them to make these the way that they do, and then put them out in the world and put their name on it, right? I've talked about this in sort of some of the stuff that I've written. Is my original system was built for PRS, and then when I transitioned to F class, well, that's the rifle I had, and so I was able to take that rifle and go out and be semi competitive in F class. I didn't have to switch anything. Oh, the only thing I had to take a brake off because they don't like brakes, and I added a tuner on. But outside of that, it was very, very competitive, and it's sort of that's what originally led me to be like, well, where can we move these things over cross disciplinary, and why do people who shoot bench in F class think that their actions are are better actions than a PRS action? And there's a lot that goes into that, but generally I'm really excited to see the growth of that in the space because I know the work that they do in this. So but how long have you've been shooting them for a year now, you're saying?
Almost 2 years. Yep.
Almost two
Yep.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So one of the
go ahead.
oh, sorry. Well, one of the things that Bat's done recently, we're talking about details, right?
Mhm.
And delivering the best possible tool for the job that it was designed for. Recently, they came out with an extractor kit.
Mhm.
So when you've got a plunger ejector on a bolt action rifle, that spring for the plunger needs to have enough force to eject the case, right?
Mhm.
But when you're closing the bolt, you have to counteract the force of that spring to close the bolt.
Mhm.
So what we found, and you can buy them on the website now, is that different brands of cases have different rim thicknesses, right?
Mhm.
But if you get the rim thickness um, to match your extractor better, so that that case is being held better against the bolt face, that allows you to go to a lighter spring behind your ejector plunger,
Mhm.
which makes it easier to close the bolt. And you still get the same functionality that you would need, right? So
Hmm.
it's little things like that, that we've been talking about. Now you don't. It's a catch-22 because you can't deliver somebody an off-the-shelf action that, if they put a heavy 308 case in, isn't going to eject, right?
Hmm.
But if you've got a PRS competitor that really wants the best of the best, and really wants everything to feel as smooth as possible, they can buy that kit. They can play with the cases, the brand of brass that they're using, tighten up that clearance between the extractor, and then have the benefits, that I have of running a little bit lighter spring, right?
Hmm.
And it's stuff like that that these guys have so much experience, um, diving into the fine details of a bolt action, that when the decision came to build one for PRS, um, I just had some ideas and some experience in the genre. Those guys already had all the answers, right? I mean,
Hmm.
any time I had some sort of an issue, that I thought it would be valuable to overcome, they had 3 or 4 ideas that were all going to work, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk a little bit about like the microsecond, right? Or the half a second or whatever it is of improvement that you're getting in performance, or maybe the peace of mind that comes with an action that will feel the same from action to action. Or, there's a lot of things that go into this. And I sort of equate this when I think about it from a coaching perspective. I go, well, how many things can we make second nature, right? Where we're not feeling like it's hindering us, and the way that your bolt runs is one of those things where if it just every time is repeatable, it no longer is something you're thinking about. And now you're focusing on the things you actually should be focusing on, right? What is the wind doing? Are there any shifts? Are you making the right adjustments? Things like that. And that's what I sort of love about this bad experience, right? Is being able to allow a lot of these things to go to second nature. And when you talk about the improvement in time and that it's not very much, the reality of this is that when you get to a certain level, it is, when I was at the world championship, um a clean was the difference of a quarter of a second, right? It's not like it's like, oh, it's 3 or 4 seconds. No, it's like literally if that had just gone a little bit quicker, just like that, right? Like they would have cleaned it and they would have positionally moved them up and it would have been a significant difference, right? And they missed that clean. And I saw that over and over and over in the 2 days that I was there, right? And so you look at stuff like that and you go like, yeah, it's not what you would consider a big adjustment, but for the level of you're competing with the people you're competing on, the way they design this, they make it just difficult enough to where you need to have everything locked in, right? And so these sort of things they stack up, and that's where you start to see small shifts and improvements in your scores, right? So I'm really excited to build on this system. I really appreciate your insight on this. I know you have a lot of stuff going on. I'm excited to follow your journey. I didn't know that you actually made breaks until I saw you post something a couple weeks back, and I was like, oh man, I wish I would have bought one of those for this build, but definitely going to look into one of those for a future build. Excited to sort of see the work that you're doing. Before we jump off, I do want to give an opportunity, if you're the sort of shooter that does have a social media account that you're willing to share out to people so they can follow your journey or maybe talk to you a little bit about some of your stuff, you want to share that out now.
yeah, yeah, I've got a Facebook and Instagram page, and it's pretty much only for my it's primarily for my competitive shooting. So it's Corson Piper, on Facebook and on Instagram. Um,
No, nobody stole it from you. I didn't have to go Corson
no,
Piper.
I got such a weird name. Nobody wanted that one. So
It was
yeah.
funny when I was talking to Bruce and they mentioned you, and I was like, great name. That's a great name, man. Super unique. So, okay, cool. If you guys want to follow him, he's over there. Follow his journey. One of the top shooters in the country, doing great things. Hopefully, we hope you make the world team. That would be great. To sort of see you pushing that forward. And for those of you guys listening, give a like, give a share, do a comment. It goes a long way to growing this community. If you have a chance, get out to the range, take a shot, and we will see you guys next time.